29.
28 seconds.
27.
26.
25 seconds.
24. 23.
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds.
19.
18.
17 seconds.
16.
15 seconds.
14.
13 seconds.
12.
11.
10 seconds.
9.
8.
7.
6.
Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Well, hello, and welcome to SubSpace Chatter. My name is Ray Tessie. I've been asked to host this edition, and I hope to make everybody proud. That's the only thing I can tell you. For those people who don't know me, I own Neutral Zone Studios, which is an original series film set. And we've made a lot of movies there. So I've been a lifelong Star Trek fan. I think I know a lot about Star Trek. I'm sure these people are going to prove me wrong, and that's okay. But I want to thank you guys and anyone who's also watching us. And I urge anybody who is watching us to please join in the chat. We'd love to hear your comments and thoughts. So I know we have Marcelo, we have Eve, we have Phil, and we have Dan online. So welcome, everybody.
Great. Happy to be here.
So I like that. I'll do it. I was given about a half an hour to come up with an idea. And I actually have two ideas, and depending on the time and the number of people, I'll even go into the second one. But I thought maybe we could go around the room, so to speak, and just talk about our top 5. And I know that's hard because I have about 30, but our top 5 favorite Star Trek episodes from any series, whether it's old time, Paramount Plus, doesn't really matter. Whatever people think is their favorite episode. So I'll go last. Normally I go first, but I do too much talking. So I'm going to pick, if everybody's ready, I'm going to pick Eve, because Eve has been chomping at the bit.
It's hard to narrow it down to 5 episodes, I'll be honest.
It is.
It really is. I can tell you my all-time top favorite, and I'm going to plug a book while I'm at it. The Inner Light.
Absolutely.
Nothing touches The Inner Light. It's my favorite piece of music to perform. It's the episode. You can know nothing about Star Trek and watch that episode and appreciate it for the excellent writing, the excellent acting. The Inner Light is hands down my holy grail. To round out my top 5, I would go with Those Old Scientists, which is the crossover episode between Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds. Because
okay.
I really enjoyed that one. I enjoyed seeing the interviews that Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid gave about how it was hard to bring their characters to life when they're not used to, seeing what they're actually doing on screen. I am going to be extremely controversial, and I will say Prophet and Lace, because Quark gets a good lesson that he needed. And I'm sorry, but watching Quark get harassed, like that episode, Pale Moonlight, I think that's a given for most Trek fans, the Pale Moonlight.
Mm-hmm.
And the 5th one, I'm going to go with something fun, Bride of Chaotica, which is what I was watching yesterday. Just because that one was, it's a fun episode. You can sit back, and they do that 1930 MP, serial thing. They just do it so well, and you can tell that the actors had a great time doing it. So for me, I think other than serious episodes like Pale Moonlight and Inner Light, for me, the episodes that are fun episodes are my favorites. Just because You can tell everybody's having a good time. They're not taking themselves too serious. It's just a great, it's a great hour spent, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, my favorite episode of modern Trek would have to be it would probably be Ad Aspera Paraspera.
Oh,
The
Astra.
Yes, the number one trial episode. And the reason for that is because I really really like the parable that's introduced in the episode, in that the finest officer in Starfleet turns out to be something that the Federation doesn't really enjoy. uh, uh, she's an enhanced human, and she just, for one reason or another, didn't feel or didn't want to hide as someone who she wasn't anymore. So spoilers, but she ends up outing herself and causing the whole thing. And I just think that it says a lot about people who feel that they are being persecuted or being looked at a different way because they don't look like everybody else.
There's a lot of
Um,
to share with
Yeah,
her.
and for me as a disabled individual, that really hit home hard for me, because I spent a large part of my life trying to ignore the fact that I wasn't like everybody else, that I couldn't do certain things, and it took me a long time to really feel comfortable with myself and feel comfortable with the individual that I was, and I just or that I am. I just because of those reasons, Ad Aspera Per Aspera is probably my favorite episode of Star Trek ever, and I know that's kind of sacrilegious because we have so many good episodes of Star Trek throughout all the series, but that's like my top favorite episode of Star Trek ever because of those those parables that are in the episode. I also love the Vulcan hello from Star Trek Discovery. And the reason for that is because it's the first Star Trek show that I was able to watch along with everybody as it aired live, and um, it was the first Star Trek episode, you know, written by one of my favorite writers of all time. So there was that whole thing where, well, one of my favorite writers of all time is working on one of my favorite franchises of all time. This can't get any better. And then I watched the episode. It was awesome. Uh, so it was just that whole thing. Another one of my favorite episodes is of Star Trek is from, and this is the last one I'll name, is from Enterprise. It's the episode with Trip and Malcolm, when they're stuck in the when they're
Shuttle
stuck
Pod
in the shut up. Thank you, Shuttle Pod One. Thank you. I love that episode. The main reason for that is because I like bottle episodes. I like when you have two characters in in an enclosed space. As a writer, that to me is the most intriguing situation that you can put two people in, because you have to come up with stuff for them to do in a box. And as a writer, I go, ooh, what to do with that?
You're kind of blurring out. I don't know if it's just on my end, but
Yeah.
you're kind of blurred out.
Yeah. Oh, so am I blurred out? I mean, my
No,
feed looks.
you're okay now. But yeah, you kind of.
Oh,
you're-
sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's just yeah. I just love that episode because it's a bottle episode. Just, and two of my favorite characters in shuttle are in a shuttle, and that's it. It's a really cool episode. Oh,
Gave us the bromance.
yeah.
is.
There's two rays.
There's two
Which one
I'm
is it?
here. I'm back.
Okay, all right. So this is the false ray. Okay,
The false
Okay.
ray.
Default rate.
false ray.
Yep.
He's a
Yeah.
shapeshifter. He's a changeling.
I am Odo.
Yeah, you're.
I end up in my bucket of water.
bucket
There
of
you go.
water.
Actually, that's another episode I like. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the one where Odo marries Loaxana.
I think it's the Forsaken, is it?
I forget what it's called, but it's that he marries her to help her, and he gives that incredibly heartfelt speech. And
Mhm.
to me, that was such a big, I don't know, to me that was such a big moment because Odo's used to being cast aside and not fitting in, and Loaxana literally just loves and embraces everybody. So
I think I Muse, with the sort of energy sucking women.
the energy vampire.
Yeah, to do with Jake's writing.
Yeah.
Right.
See, this is why I love you, Dan. I can be like, there's this episode, and you'll know exactly which one it is.
Yeah, it's a great thing, especially if you're a Star Trek fan, having one or two friends that you can just call up and go, I'm thinking of this episode where this happened, and before you stop speaking, they'll tell you what the episode is. Which is
There
Which
are
is
times
great.
when you get to the age where you have to do that.
yeah, where you have to, you're like, yeah.
That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I mean,
Phil, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I was saying I know I winked out there for a minute, but Phil, have you gone?
No, I haven't gone yet. I was wondering if Marcella was finished or.
Oh no, I'm done, Phil. I'm done.
Okay.
Listen, Phil.
Well, for me, I was able to pick a few, and nothing for modern Trek. Even though I have nothing against modern Trek, I'm a big fan of Picard season 3. All the lower decks has always been a treat, and it was just what are the top 5 I can pick from that I like I've sat with the longest, and like what do they mean to me? And I think just the 5 that I can think of are basically from like the original series, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise. And so I was kind of stuck in this like how do I pick? Because I mean, yeah, it's over. I forget how many episodes are all together now, but I think we're encroaching on like 1,000 now. Like, how do you pick 5 from all of that? I mean, it's kind of a daunting task, but nevertheless, I tried. I think I'll start with my 5th one. I think for me it was Enterprise. This episode called First Flight. It's kind of like Star Trek's Right Stuff, and that's like one of my favorite movies. And so, seeing Captain Archer and his friend A.G. Robinson kind of have this like rivalry between each other, I thought was a fun thing for me. I guess my 4th one would be a Star Trek Voyager episode, Distant Origin. It's the one where there's these aliens, the Voth. They're like, I guess what it's revealed is like I guess they're descended from a certain type of dinosaur that's somehow eventually acquired spaceflight, and I think they've kind of touched on them a little bit in the Star Trek Online game. I'm not exactly sure where they went with it, but that kind of stuff kind of stirs my imagination, even if it is sort of a little kooky to some, I think. But the 3rd one I would choose is from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Far Beyond the Stars. I think that's the one with where Captain Sisko and everybody are like on Earth, and it's like the 1950s, and Sisko is trying to write basically Deep Space Nine, but it's like a 1950s science fiction pulp novel. Or it's it's one of the greats, and it's produced or it was written by this writer named Mark Scott Zicree, and I'm kind of involved in a project that he's working on called Space Command, and just seeing that kind of where he wanted to go with it and where the story ended up is quite fascinating to me. And I guess my number two, and picking one from Star Trek: The Next Generation is kind of challenging because I think there's just so many great episodes. But I went with one because for me, I think the episodes I tend to rewatch on Star Trek tend to be episodes that kind of explore the unknown or kind of inspire a sense of awe in me, and or just kind of like play with my stir my imagination. I think for me, ultimately, I had to pick Darmok because it's fascinating how language phrases kind of play a role in the conversation between Captain Picard and this alien that we would kind of have a difficult time trying to communicate with. And I think it's a great episode. And then I guess for my first, no particular order, but for the first spot, Star Trek: The Original Series, The Devil in the Dark. That's the one with the Horta. Yeah. And something about that's kind of always fascinated me. Some kind of a being that isn't really being, evil necessarily, but is trying to defend its young, and we kind of interpret it as something else entirely, and then we get it all wrong. And some of the moral implications of that are interesting to me. And so for me, I think that's what I would those episodes would kind of fit in my pocket of what I would rewatch, or if I wanted to show somebody an episode of Star Trek to kind of show what the show's about or kind of pique their interest, I would kind of show these ones and see where people think, or where they want to, if they want to continue watching, if they if they enjoyed any of these.
I have a question for you, Phil. Because you mentioned the Horta episode specifically, and episodes where they're doing, exploring the unknown or whatever. Do you think they've kind of dropped the ball by not giving us more non-carbon based life forms? Because the Horta is silicon based. Do you think that they've maybe dropped the ball there, that they haven't given us more aliens that aren't carbon based?
I mean, for me, I think that that's a definite, kind of an issue for me, because we do run into like 90% like humanoid aliens, and I don't know why, it's a production limitation. But that's what's so fascinating about like the Star Trek original or the animated series, is that they were able to get away with so much more, design work for aliens. I mean, there's some really bizarre aliens that pop up in the animated show because you can get away with that in an animated format. I think they kind of get away with that a little bit too in Lower Decks because of the same format. But yeah, I would prefer some more out of the box thinking when it comes to aliens. And I know, with the production limitations that you want to communicate with another being or whatever. I mean, there's been some great non-corporeal beings that have shown up, throughout the franchise as well. But I mean, I would say in terms of biological entities, I would prefer, something like a Horta to pop up again, or even something even more out of the box. I can't even think of anything off the top of my head just yet. But yeah, something different would be interesting to me. And I think that they have been dropping the ball in terms of that. And, again, I know why it's the production limitations, but I feel like that with the technology as it is now, we can get away with so much more that I don't know if that's a valid excuse anymore.
And there have been episodes in other series, especially I think Next Gen, although the other series carried it as well. But, and of course, because I'm going to go to Dan, but Skin of Evil, that tar creature, I should know his name, but I don't. Armis.
Yeah.
Armis was one. And then I thought that episode was terrific. It's not my top 5, but the way that any series that would kill off a primary character, for whatever the reason, always impresses me. And the other one that had them was there's an episode of Next Generation where they find, and I think they're silicon-based creatures that live in the sand, right? Can't think of the name of the episode, but Data kind of finds them. They're on a mining planet, and they take over some of the machines and equipment. If I had a half a brain, I'd think of the episode name, but I can't.
Yeah, no
Right.
worries. I'm bad with episode names as well. I'm not.
I think that might be home soil.
Yes, there you go.
Dan
There you
saves the day.
go. Okay.
100%. 100%. Well, thanks, Phil. Dan, are you in it?
Yeah. I found this like really difficult, and I've just been thinking about this while we've been live. For a while, I thought probably Shades of Grey, because I think it's really inventive. But it's
50 States of Rock.
in my mind, it's just been trumped by Yesterday's Enterprise,
Oh,
which I really love the alternative time, the alternate timeline of that episode, the fact that the Enterprise is at war, the action in it, as well as like philosophical sort of contemplation stuff, which you get, I think, a lot in different episodes like Far Beyond the Stars or like The Inner Light. But I think like I watching those sort of episodes, I often have an issue with like The Inner Light. Like I really like the ideas in that episode, but I have an issue with like the pacing. It can seem sort of slow, so at times. So I think it's like I need to be in the mood to watch it sometimes. Maybe that makes sense. Oh, makes sense. So I went for Yesterday's Enterprise as choice number one. Then choice number two, All Good Things. I thought that was a brilliant series finale. The brought the series, full circle, as it were, with Q's test of humanity. The test never ends. Having been introduced and encountered at Farpoint. I really like the Stina Cell Enterprise in that episode as well. And it's a double length episode, just like option my third pick, which would be The Way of the Warrior. I thought it was a great episode of Deep Space Nine. As I say again, like double length. I like the fact, the way that the relationship is portrayed between Cassidy Yates and Cisco. I like the basically the whole premise, part of the premise of the Next Generation, which of course set up Deep Space Nine, was the Federation. Are now finally, after being Klingons in the original series, they're now sort of allies and friends with the Klingons finally, and then that's broken off by what happens in The Way of the Warrior, and they're no longer allies. So I thought that was a great episode to portray the Klingons, which are one of my favorite species.
I gotta say, Deep Space Nine. I know Deep Space Nine is what they would call the redheaded stepchild, but it really gave us a lot more depth to certain species, like the Klingons, like the Ferengi. I mean, the Ferengi stopped being the joke that they were in the Next Generation, and the Klingons, we got to see way more. Like, you just made me think of the episode "You're Cordially Invited," where it was Dax and Worf's wedding, and we got to see like what a Klingon, what Klingon marriage looks like, other than House of Quark. I mean, that one was something else completely. But I think Deep Space Nine, out of all the shows, gave us that more than anything, because like what Marcelo said, Deep Space Nine was literally people in a room. They're not going anywhere. They're not exploring. They're in a room. They're just there. So you gotta actually make them interesting, give them things to do. And I think Deep Space Nine, like, I did not like Klingons until Deep Space Nine, because I thought they were just like drunk thugs.
I think as well,
I thought were a joke until Deep Space Nine.
Talking about how Deep Space Nine portrays species, I really liked like they continued referencing and even showing the Breen, which have been introduced as references in the Next Generation, and then finally just recently been sort of more fleshed out in Discovery. So I am really a fan of species who we don't know much about. Another being which I mentioned in the Adversary in Deep Space Nine. So for Enterprise, I almost picked Future Tense because I really like that they're portrayed as Tholians, which is another species that you hardly know about in all of Trek. But eventually, I had to go for my favorite Enterprise episode, which is These Are the Voyages, because the whole way through Enterprise, it was like I wish we could get more of a indication of like how significant these events are. This show is the events depicted in the show are to the future, and finally, like we get a sense of that in These Are the Voyages. I feel. I know like some fans are disheartened that Trip dies, but I've always said, well, Trip doesn't actually die in the episode. It's the holographic Trip that dies. So and if you if you go by the novels, then even like that's just a setup. The Trip actually, the novels portray Trip joining Section 31 after that occurs. So I thought it was I don't think it was the best way to wrap up the series of Enterprise. So I understand people's feelings of frustration regarding that, but I still really like the episode, and I would say it is my favorite Enterprise episode. And
I gotta
lastly,
ask, because Discovery, the finale of Discovery, touched on the Enterprise ending. Do you think Discovery was their way of kind of correcting where they went wrong?
I don't think so. I think it was just a tip of the hat to Enterprise. My fifth and final pick would be the Discovery episode, which I can hardly say, Civis Pacem Parabellum, which I saw and I loved. A trip being given the opportunity to go to London on an all expenses paid trip by the company that runs the Star Trek wiki. I stay in a hotel and everything in London. It was really nice and posh for one night, and then see that particular episode on the big screen the next day and meet like one of the writers there from Discovery. I also visited like a museum in Blackpool, England, around the same time of that occasion. And so like the first season of Discovery really is sentimental to me. Just loving the show at that point. And in that particular episode, like I really like you get like the basically the start of the relationship between Michael Burnham and Ash Tyler, who I've always felt like Ash Tyler was a strong character. I wish they'd done more with him. Who it turns out is the Klingon Vogue. I also like you see like Saru, who is another my favorite characters. Like Fast Forest.
Anyone not like Saru? Like, let's be real here. If you don't like Saru, you really don't like Star Trek, because Saru is just awesome.
Yeah. So I think there were certain parallels actually between that episode and like the aliens in that episode and the Organians and the Mercy, which is I really like that episode as well. So that Discovery episode is one of my favorites as well.
Very cool. Very cool. You guys have hit on some really interesting and even topical episodes. So I approach Star Trek maybe a little differently. I like episodes that certainly make you think. I think the original series, which I grew up with, did a lot to bring music to the forefront of episodes and themes. And I look for things that are maybe first time type. I don't want to say first time episodes, but the first time you saw something, like you saw the Horda. So that was the first time you saw a creature like the Horda. And so, yeah, it's hard to pick 5, but I've got 3 from TOS and I've got 2 from Next Gen. So I think my first pick is The Naked Time. And I like The Naked Time because, to me, that is the episode that interacts all the characters. You find out, what's in their heads. You find out why they're friends. You find out, their flaws. It also, Kirk is obviously the quintessential captain. Spock, well, he's the flawed human, right? He's the guy who's got conflict going on in his own head, and he's trying to make sense of it all. And that episode made me realize that McCoy was the audience. So McCoy is asking the questions that we're all sitting at home going, why did he do that? And McCoy would say, why did you do that? And you'd get your answer. So I think Naked Time probably sits up as my top episode. Second one is The Doomsday Machine. There again, not only the plot, but the music. And it's one of the only Star Trek episodes, I believe, and I think I read this if I'm right, where every character has their own theme music. Saw an article or a video interview with Norman Spinrad. And it was just fascinating how he came up with the idea. But the fact that, they used individual music cues and you knew exactly, excuse me, you knew exactly what was going on and you knew how to feel. You knew what your emotion should be. So I think Doomsday Machine is probably my number 2. And then Mirror Mirror is probably number 3. And again, here's where Star Trek introduces the parallel universe concept that became a running theme everywhere. It's just kind of amazing that, we pick up on things and things become canon. I'm really not sure what canon is. I think we made up canon, but that's okay. But, the fact that they came up with this idea of a mirror universe, and really it's been in books, it's been in movies, it's been everywhere. And that's the first time I think you probably saw it. It may have existed in very old movies, maybe very old TV series, but to me, that was the first place I saw it.
I'm going to say the Mirrorverse thing. To me, Enterprise did the Mirrorverse episodes perfectly with the changed intro. The changed intro, the changed music, everything was just...
It sure was. And the thing about that episode, and unfortunately, it doesn't get in my top 5, but 100% was the fact that somebody had a brain and went back and watched the Tholian web. And not only did the Tholian ship wink out, but it winked into another universe in another time. And, it was fascinating to see that whole thing play out. And yeah, that episode is tremendous. Good call on that.
Yeah, that was the one thing that stuck out for me for Enterprise, because Enterprise was the first Star Trek I got to watch as it aired. And I remember seeing the first Mirrorverse episode and the changed intro credits, the changed music, and I was sitting there going, okay, I know this is going to be interesting now. They did it so well. Like, honestly, I kind of wish the other Star Treks had done the changed intros too, because I'm I'm a huge fan of things like altered history, like what if, what if a certain German dictator, I don't want to flag YouTube here, what if certain German dictator made it to North America? What if Stalin managed to do more than he did? Like, I'm a fan of
Right.
alternate history, so
Right.
Yeah, you should definitely watch The Man in the High Castle then.
I have.
Oh, good, good. Well, I love that show. So,
I love my
Yeah.
alternate histories.
And even staying with that, Eve, the finale of Enterprise episode 3 and the first episode of episode 4, where they end up in New York, where the Nazis have taken over, but by influence of aliens. I think that's outstanding. I think that's outstanding. And one of the scenes that I really like is when I think it's the shuttle is coming down with Trip driving the shuttle, and then all of a sudden they're getting pelted by World War II bullets from planes. To me, that's just great. That's just great. So I love all that stuff. I love all that stuff.
It kind of reminds me a little bit too of I don't know the name of the episode, but it's original series where Kirk finds his old mentor or friend or whatever in charge of a planet, but he's kind of drugged out of his gourd, and he's reenacted 1930s, 40s Germany, and he's basically brought the Third Reich into an entire
Patterns of Force, I think.
Patterns of Force. Yep. John Gill was the character. He was.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Gill. I think that's a great episode. Great episode.
Because it does make a certain point that nobody likes, which is that for Germany, that had to happen for Germany to recover after World War I and the reparations. And while it wasn't ideal, it brought stability to what was an unstable situation. And I love that Star Trek was bold enough to say, like, we're going to do this. It's comfortable, it's not pleasant, but we are going to do this.
I had actually seen an interview with, I think it was Shatner. And they were talking about that episode. I don't even know what brought them to talk about the episode, but I remember him saying that. And if you think about it, right, so that's what, 1966 or maybe 67. So you're only about 40 some odd years removed from World War II. And he said that the cast and crew wanted to do an episode about Nazi Germany. And I don't know if that's what inspired the episode, but it was something that they wanted to talk about.
I'm kind of wondering, and I'm kind of hoping in a weird way, and please don't take this the wrong way, but with all the crises we have in the Middle East right now, I would find it interesting if they did a Star Trek that reflected the situation of the Middle East. Because, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but Saddam Hussein was not a great guy. He really wasn't. He was awful, but he kept that region stable. And when he was removed, everything destabilized. So I'd be interested to see how Star Trek would tackle that.
Yeah. I mean, there's been the same argument where, like, for all of his faults, like Pablo Escobar was an awful drug, kingpin, but removing him turned one problem into 50.
Yeah.
And, for that, yeah, it's a problem. But, I mean, there's a lot of Middle Eastern, conflicts that I think would make great Star Trek sort of parallels. I've kind of always thought, I mean, I may be off base, but the Cardassian Bajor thing was sort of a, Israel-Palestine's sort of situation. Because, I mean, literally, the Cardassians are, trying to commit genocide against, an entire group of people. And, there's a lot of gray because the Bajorans aren't really, portrayed in a positive light sometimes, and neither are the Cardassians. It's a very, very, muddy conflict, but I think it's a conflict that's very ripe for storytelling.
I love that though about Star Trek that we're not like I love that Star Trek takes it as there isn't always a good guy. I mean, I Dan knows I'm obsessed with Section 31 and I'm
No,
but,
I no. The reason why I'm laughing is because that's just so you would totally be obsessed with Section 31.
well, because even it said in Deep Space Nine, it's easy to be a saint in paradise, you know.
Yeah.
Somebody's just because you play nice in the sandbox, not everyone else is playing nice in the sandbox, and you need somebody to do the dirty work. You
Right.
know, even Sloane says to Bashir, we need men like you know, who can do this but can also sleep at night. But I mean, I love that Star Trek has that element of Section 31 because it's like, yeah, okay, humans still aren't perfect. Humans are still, you know, we're really just hairless apes fighting over things, fighting over territory, fighting over trinkets, whatever. I love that there's no good guys all the time. There's no bad guys all the time. I mean, the Bajorans, for instance, you've got a deeply religious people where I always saw the Bajorans as being a parallel to Jewish people in that a lot of Jewish people, it's both an ethnicity and a religion. So it's very intertwined. And I saw the Bajorans that way. And I mean, we see good Bajorans like Vedic Bareil. But then we see other Bajorans like Kai Wynn, who we all love to hate. I love that Star Trek gives us, you know, nobody's a good all the time. Nobody's bad all the time. There's good and there's bad. And it's what is happening in that moment, in that situation, you know, that determines the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, one of my favorite Star Trek series. For me, the most fascinating thing, the first time I ever watched it was the first time I ever watched Deep Space Nine, and I really took a look at it and I started to think about it. The Cardassians were basically space Nazis, and the and the Bajorans were the Jewish folks, and I was like, wow, that's what they're. And I'm like, oh my god, Star Trek is talking about this. I was just so fascinated with the way that Michael Piller, Rick Berman, and did that. I was like, really, you guys wanted to do a Star Trek show about this? Okay, this is cool. I was like, I was so surprised with that.
I think that's why Deep Space Nine gets a lot of hate.
Yeah. But at the same time, Deep Space Nine has probably aged the best in terms that the social issues we see on Deep Space Nine are still relevant today. Like, still have all those. And initially I didn't like Cisco because I'm like, okay, seriously, like you joined Starfleet, you knew death could happen, like grow up, your son needs a father, like get it together. But that's just the teacher in me speaking. But I like Cisco in that he starts out using the Bajoran belief to get what he wants. And then over time, he evolves to realize that it's not just a belief, it's reality. And he ends up going to bat for the Bajorans multiple times, like the episode where he sees like it was like a plague of locusts or something. And it was that was the episode where he turns around and tells the Federation that no, he's not going to bring Bajor into the Federation because if he does, Bajor will be destroyed because of the war. I just can't remember the episode.
Right.
But I love seeing that he goes from, using the Bajoran religion to his advantage to he eventually genuinely comes to understand his place in their religion. And it turns out that, the prophets are real and the prophets do have a vested interest in the people of Bajor.
Yeah, the other thing about Deep Space Nine that I found endlessly fascinating is the way that it dealt with trauma and how it deals with how it showed how deeply scarred Kira Nerys was, particularly in the episode Duet, I believe it's called. And to see her her state of mind and how it was affected, and the way that she just went about the world, it was just a really really cool character beat to give to a science fiction character in a Star Trek show, because before Deep Space Nine you would have those underlying political themes like in the original series, but
It was
Deep
up.
Space Nine, yeah. Deep Space Nine was the first show to really hit you in the face with it, if you were paying attention. And I love that about the show.
It wasn't optimistic. Like, I
No.
mean, you guys, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's been a meme that's made its way around the internet from the show Wednesday, and
Yeah.
it shows Wednesday and her roommate is labeled as Next Generation because she's so bright and colorful, and Wednesday is labeled as Deep Space Nine.
Nine.
But when you mention trauma, like, I think the episode is it's only a Paper Moon, the one with Nog, where Nog
Yeah.
The other
is
one you
suffering.
mentioned is called Rapture.
Oh yeah, yeah. The episode with Nog, like losing his leg, like, through my work, I've worked with veterans and stuff like that, and that episode to me really hits home because it shows like this is the cost of war. Like, you know, war isn't pretty. War leaves these major scars, and you see somebody like Nog who joins Starfleet because he really wanted to do something with his life and everything, and he ends up almost not being able to stay with Starfleet because of his injury.
Right.
Like, that episode to me, that episode shows like PTSD from war. It shows it really, really well.
Yeah, I agree. To go back to the original series, I asked our viewers like if they could pick their top 5 on. I asked on Twitter, or as it's called now, X, and several people replied. One of them named all original series episodes. Carol, and I asked why that was, and she said she does like all the other Star Trek series. It's just the original series is her favorite. The episodes she listed, unfortunately, or
you broke
she
up,
didn't list
Dan.
5. She listed 6. Basically,
Dan, you broke up there. Dan, you broke up.
You broke up, buddy.
Okay, sorry. She listed Amok Time,
Spock gets
Journey to Babel. Journey to Babel. The Trouble with Tribbles, A Piece of the Action, The Deadly Years, and All Your Yesterdays. Then also in the chat, Jim Brown has said The Best of Both Worlds and Space Seed.
Space Seed, hands down. That gave us the guy who beat Kirk twice.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, you've addressed the original series. I was wondering, like, which episodes of the generation.
So I have 2 that I picked for the Next Generation, and there are both episodes that some of you have already picked. So the first one, my first choice, is The Inner Light.
Yes.
I have a heartache at the end when Picard holds on to that flute.
It's funny. The flute isn't even playable. It was plugged, and he just fingers it. Yeah, because and that part always amazed me that it was. Well, I figured out early on that he wasn't playing it because I'm like, nope, I know what that instrument is, and the fingerings don't line up with the tones. But
it's okay. It's okay.
but I'm obsessed with The Inner Light.
Yeah, that to me, the whole arc of Picard's other life, and that it's going to stay with him forever. That to me was outstanding, and seeing the family grow and losing the family, and just a tragic episode, but yet very, very emotional.
You know,
And you're right about the music. Yeah,
that,
you're right
that
about the music, Eve.
well, I'm a professional musician, so that's why I'm obsessed with the music. But the one thing that episode really reminds me of, I don't know if anyone has seen the movie Cloud Atlas.
Yeah.
I
I've
have
seen the
not.
movie.
Okay, so short form, Tom Hanks actually gave up his salary to make sure the movie got made because he believed this movie should be made. And it was a hard one for them to make because it's non-linear. It's a lot. It's 6 different
Yeah.
timelines, but
Yeah.
there's a piece of music that is woven throughout the whole movie, and it shows up in variations. It shows up in different styles, and that one piece of music is what connects all 6 storylines. And so, to me, I saw Inner Light when it was in syndication when I was older. So when I saw Inner Light, I had just watched Cloud Atlas, and the idea of a piece of music that just tied everything together, that carried everything through, it just felt like there was a parallel there. I don't think that was what the Trek writers intended because Cloud Atlas hadn't been made yet, but that idea of one piece of music tying everything together was just so powerful. And I will say, with the Journey to the Inner Light, the last page of the book has an F sharp, and I don't know if Jay Chataway or Terry Potts Chataway knew this when she wrote the book, but F sharp is considered to be the note that Earth vibrates on.
Oh.
There's a lot of old texts and a lot of spiritual traditions that have determined that if we could perceive the frequency of Earth's vibration, it's an F sharp, and there's an F sharp at the end of the book. And I don't know if she knew that when she did it, because the Inner Light's in the key of D major, so F sharp totally fits that. But there's just too much there. Like, I love the whole concept, and if you guys can try and watch Cloud Atlas, and you'll see what I mean about a piece of music that ties everything together.
Yeah. No, I remember I went to go see Cloud Atlas in the theater because I am a fan of the Wachowskis. I thought Cloud Atlas was a very, very interesting movie. There are things about it that didn't work for me all the time, but I thought it was a really, really interesting attempt by the Wachowskis.
It's not an easy movie to follow. I get that, but you look at the names that were behind it, you look at the people who invested in it. Like when Tom Hanks himself said he was gonna give up his salary so the movie would get made, like that's when you know something actually is worth, even if it's not easy, even if it's not, entertaining per se, it's worth it when something like that happens.
Cool. Yeah. I like that. That's interesting about the book. So something I'll have to look for.
Yeah, no, the book is a really good read. Like the way she wrote the book, she uses both the Inner Light and his love of sailing to tie his whole biography together.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a good read. Dan's read it. I've read it. It's a good read.
Okay. Excellent. So let me give you my last pick, which has already been mentioned as well, and that's Yesterday's Enterprise. I am just fascinated by that storyline. I like the fact that they would bring back Tasha Denise Crosby. I just love the fact that they would bring him back. They altered things enough to make you know it was a different timeline. And I love the character of Rachel Garrett. Another tragic figure in Star Trek history, but you know what? She was a captain, and that made a lot of sense. And that to me, that's almost my go-to episode. I think both of those are my go-to next gen episodes.
Isn't that the
Um,
episode where we find out
Very
too
cool.
that Guinan can sense changes in timelines?
Yeah.
And
I was going to mention that it's an interesting use of Guinan in that episode, and they didn't always do that. But even the fact, and again, you do the full circle thing, right?
Mhm.
So Guinan senses that Tasha doesn't belong in the timeline, and eventually tells Tasha she doesn't belong in the timeline. And at the very end, when things get back to normal, Guinan goes up to Geordi and says, "Tell me about Tasha Yar." So she remembered, right? Everybody else went back to normal, but Guinan remembered. But even in what's the episode with Mark Twain?
Times Arrow.
episode, I forget it.
Times Arrow.
Exactly, Times Arrow. Great episode all around by all the characters, and a great use of Guinan in that episode. Great use of Guinan, and the backstory of how Guinan and Picard met, how Guinan and Data met. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I like episodes like that. This has been very fascinating. I like when things take turns. And I like when I can sit back and just let everybody have a lot of fun. I enjoy that.
Yeah.
Any last comments?
Well,
No,
I wonder-
sorry, go Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
I wondered if you like having named those episodes and in particular having a liking to how Guinan is portrayed in both of those stories. I wondered if you like Generations and how she's depicted in that.
It's interesting because that's your introduction to Guinan. I don't think they made enough of her character. I could be wrong, but I don't think they made enough of her character in Generations, but they did bring her in. They did, she obviously went through the ribbon, right? So she got affected in some way, shape, or form, and one of the few survivors. But I like Generations a lot. I like that they, would bring in characters, and make use of them. But I don't know that they really made enough of her. I could be wrong. I haven't seen Generations in a million years, but I think they could have probably done more with her.
I think that's true of a lot of Star Trek characters. Sometimes I think they just get too many characters and not enough, they get too many characters and they don't get enough ideas to work with them.
Yeah.
I mean, chances are there's probably entire rooms of Star Trek writers going, "Why didn't we do this?"
Yeah.
Like hindsight.
Exactly.
I mean, Discovery, I know Discovery gets a lot of flack for that, in that we lost a lot of characters without a lot of story. Like, no one's going to convince me that Ariam did not get a good end. Her end was horrific. We needed more of her.
Awful.
Yeah, her end was awful. Like, Discovery has that issue where they kind of focused a little too much on a couple of characters and let everyone by the wayside.
Yeah.
I mean, the only non-human they tried to really flesh out was Saru, and they did a good job, but they really let a lot of the characters by the wayside. Strange New Worlds, I like the way they're going. They're trying to develop the characters. They're trying to give us the story and make us care about them. Lower Decks is Lower Decks. It's hilarious. It's just what it is.
Um,
But yeah,
if I may,
Discovery kind of drops the ball a lot, and I think that's an issue with Star Trek overall. Is sometimes they get these good characters, these good ideas, and then they kind of forget to do anything about it.
if I may, I could read out another listing of top 5 episodes.
Sure.
Cool. So there's a writer who's written professionally about Star Trek called Eric Pasola. He was one of the people who commented about his top picks. So he said, The Doomsday Machine, Space Seed, All Good Things, The Best of Both Worlds, and In the Pale Moonlight.
Pale Moonlight is, to this day, I like, out of all the Star Trek speeches, all the Star Trek monologues, Sisko's ending in Pale Moonlight is just, they did it perfectly. Nobody's going to convince me that there was a way they could have done it better because it's flawless, especially when he says, I can live with it. Like, I mean, to me, that's the moment we see, that's really when we see Sisko's full circle, because when we meet him at the beginning of Deep Space Nine, he's broken. He's a widow. He's mourning his wife. He hates Picard because he blames Picard for his wife's death, even though he knows Picard was not in control of himself. He's trying to be a dad. Starfleet's kind of shoved him to what they thought was a backwater where he could just, park at a desk and not do anything. And that's what they did to him. And they put him out to pasture like an old horse.
Yeah,
and,
that's funny.
Sorry, I'm in Alberta. So sorry for the farm analogy. But they did that to him. And then to me, that episode brings him full circle, because at that point, he's fully embraced himself as the emissary. He's fully embraced his role, but he's also had to make some extreme sacrifices for the greater good. And like when he gives that speech, like I can watch that ending speech over and over and over, and I never get tired of it, because to me, that speech is like, it's up there. It's,
Yeah, it's a great speech.
it's powerful because you see everything, like the conflict, the pain, the choices, the compromise. And then when he says, I can live with it, it's like that hits. I cried when I first saw that episode.
Yeah, definitely hits.
And I think like Dan's probably going to kick my ass for this, but I always like the darker Star Treks. I love Discovery. I love Enterprise. I love Deep Space Nine. I love the
darker Star Treks,
because
I like that. I like them too.
I love TNG. I love Voyager.
So I'll keep both of
Too
them.
hopeful. They're too hopeful for me, and I love the darker Star Treks because the darker Star Treks are the ones that like reach in and grab your heart and grind it into pieces.
But here's the thing. Like if you look at Discovery, the entire first season was taking it was like taking a big giant pill of depression.
It was.
That's like the whole first season of Disco. So it's like, yeah, you want some dark Star Trek? Here you go. Yeah.
I'll give you that. I mean, if I want to watch Star Trek to give my brain dessert, I'll watch Lower Decks. I love Lower Decks, but I love the darker Star Treks like Enterprise. We see ourselves out there for the first time, screwing up and being stupid and not getting it. Deep Space Nine, they're faced with this war that they didn't even plan on, and there's so many different alien races, and Sisko's got to deal with a crew that doesn't necessarily want to work together, but he's got to make it happen. And Discovery, like, people can crap on Discovery all they want. I don't care. But for me, Discovery being set before Enterprise, like, we're seeing humans not necessarily at our best. We're seeing humans probably as realistically as would happen. I mean, we're going to go out into space. We're going to fuck up. We're going to stumble. We're going to make a mess of everything. We're going to think we know it all.
Yeah.
Like, I love those Star Treks because those ones really, I don't know, to me, those ones challenge. And I love the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I like Star Trek best when it skews a little bit more seriously and asks questions about who we are, where we're going, and why we do certain things. But that's just me.
I mean, I love the fun ones. I mean, I was watching Bride of Chaotica yesterday. I love Little Green Men in Deep Space Nine, where, you know, Rom and Quark are the reason for Roswell. Like, I love
great episode.
Yeah, I love the fun ones, but for me, when I watch Star Trek, I watch Star Trek because I want to be challenged. I want somebody to. Okay, this is. I think it's the Princess Bride where he smacks the guy in the face with the metal gauntlet. I want to be smacked in the face with a metal gauntlet when I watch my Star Trek. I want to be, like, oh my God, this is what I really am.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, that's why when I mean, they still talk about Star Trek, but when Star Trek was rebooted with Star Trek 09, I looked at Star Trek 09, the opening scene of Star Trek 09, I'm like, oh my God. This is like so much faster and so much more intense than I was used to. And I'm like, this is awesome. And if you look at that,
I like the JJ movies, except I don't like Beyond because Benedict Cumberbatch has even said he regrets taking the role of Khan because
Star Trek Into Darkness, you mean?
Skinny white dude playing Khan just doesn't work.
Into Darkness, you mean? Because Beyond was the
Crawl. Into Darkness. I'm sorry. I make
interesting you bring that up, Into Darkness, and I had read this, and I don't know if it was intended or not, but supposedly at the end of the movie, when they show that there are all the other survivors who are in pods, that they were supposed to, camera was supposed to run across one of those windows, and Khan was supposed to be in the pod. Real Khan. Real Khan.
See, for me, the movie could have been saved by one thing. Khan doesn't hide who he is. Khan is that confident and arrogant. He doesn't hide who he is. So having him pretend to be somebody he's not did not make sense. It would have made more sense if they wanted to have him as Jim Harriman and he woke up before Khan, so he assassinated Khan to take place. That would fit.
Or even better yet, don't make him Khan at all. Make him somebody else.
Could have just been what he was, and just they didn't, have to make up.
Yeah,
just try to like shoehorn Khan in because, fan service. We have to do it this way, and it's
No, but
I don't know about you guys, but in Canada, people thought when they were promoting the movie, people thought the villain was going to be Gary Mitchell. Thought that, and I was sitting there going, "It's going to be Khan. It has to be Khan."
Yeah, no, I thought for the longest time until I started really looking at him, I thought this is Gary Mitchell. It's going to be Gary Mitchell. I was so disappointed. I was like, what? Oh, boo.
I was disappointed because I was like, it's Khan, but he's not Khan.
Yeah.
And I have no disrespect to Benedict Cumberbatch. He's an amazing actor. Yeah. I love his Sherlock films. I love his work, but I've seen where he said that he knows that it was not a
Right.
role that made sense.
No, and also the more frustrating thing about it was if you listen to the commentary on '09, at the end of the commentary, Alex, Bob, and Damon, who were the writers of In the Darkness, they all say, "We're not going to do Wrath of Khan. We're not going to." And what do? They
Yep.
they did the exact thing they did the exact thing that they said they weren't going to do. So that doesn't make sense to me. That those guys couldn't come up with anything else except something we already did before.
I have to wonder if they were doing that because they already knew that the JJ movies were not doing as well as other Star Trek movies and Star Trek. I
Yeah.
mean, to be fair, Star Trek movies don't typically do that
well.
well. Star Trek to me is kind of like the Marvel DC thing. DC makes great movies but lousy shows. Marvel makes great movies, lousy shows. DC makes lousy shows, great movies. Like they're the opposite.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so to me, Star Trek is like that. Like Star Wars makes amazing films, Star Wars makes lousy shows. Star Trek makes great shows, it makes lousy movies.
Right. Right.
I get it. I get it. So I think we've been on for quite a bit.
Yeah.
This has been fascinating. I'm thrilled. I'm having a lot of fun. I feel like I've done nothing, but I've done everything. So so that's good. And I do have a topic for whenever I do this again. Maybe I'll be able to do it on a regular basis. But here's my topic, and we'll leave it at that. So Shatner has written a couple of books, Star Trek Memories, right? Star Trek Memories, Star Trek, that's okay, Star Trek Movie Memories. My idea is that we should get on and we should play Star Trek Fan Memories. Let's talk about our biggest fan moments that we've experienced, whether it's who we...
I got some good ones.
Me too. Me too. So maybe that'll be our next subject matter.
I don't know. I know Dan asked me to host next week. I don't know what the topic is.
Steal mine, Eve. Steal mine.
I proposed doing a couple of episodes on the Star Trek parodies like Galaxy Quest and the Orville.
Great.
Yeah, we can do that.
But I'll let Dan take the wheel there. He asked me to host next week, and I'll host next week. But yeah, I've got a few ideas, but
that's great. That's great.
When it comes to memories, I've got some big ones. My background, I'll give you guys a quick rundown. The reason I have this particular background, Garrett Wong was the first Star Trek actor I ever met. He spends a lot of time in Calgary and in Alberta here in Canada because I believe his wife is Canadian. I learned to play clarinet because he played clarinet on the show, and I had such a crush on him. I had to learn the clarinet, and when I met him, I told him that, and I gifted him a copy of my Star Trek Voyager theme music because I work with Hal Leonard Publishing, so it's completely legal for me to publish copyrighted music. I transcribed sheet music and I gifted it to him, and he actually said it was the first gift that a fan actually worked on.
Oh wow!
That he received.
Cool.
He said he only ever gets comm badges and that he has drawers of them.
Oh my God, drawers of comm badges.
And
he loved my arrangement, and so that's why that's the picture, because to me, I learned clarinet because I had a crush and I got to give him my work. And so I got some pretty cool fan memories, but he's my favorite.
Cool. Cool.
Cool stuff.
Garrett's a good guy. He's a real good guy. I think he's trying to still figure out. I think he's still trying to figure out why he's still an ensign.
He's a sweetheart.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he
Yeah.
is.
In
Yes,
person,
he is.
honestly, in person, he is a sweetheart. I've been pretty lucky with Star Trek actors. Shatner's the one I won't ever meet, and I've had opportunities, and I won't meet Shatner because Shatner's an asshole, and we all know that here. But Garrett, Garrett was a sweetheart.
Mm.
Another fun one, if you can meet John Delancey, he really has stories.
That's interesting.
Well, let's save that for another occasion. Okay, but Eve, whatever your subject matter is, and you're the host, I'll be there.
Okay, sounds good. I'm hoping Dan thinks my idea is good, because I really think we need to talk about the Star Trek parodies because they're pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hey, any reason to talk about the Orville? I'm in because I love the Orville. So
I do too, and I'm not a Seth MacFarlane fan.
I know. I am a Seth MacFarlane fan, and I just adore the Orville so much.
I'm really not a fan, but when I saw him in Enterprise and then I saw Orville, I was like, he really gets Star Trek. He really gets it.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
And I
All
can
right.
respect like Futurama. Futurama has great Star Trek episodes.
Yeah.
100%. Okay. I think we should probably wrap it up for now. And we'll wait to hear what we're doing next.
All right. Well, it's been
All
fun,
right,
guys.
Thank you, everybody. Marcelo, thank you for organizing all this. And Dan, I hope I did you proud.
Yes, thank you for hosting so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I hope I didn't go too many tangents, Dan. I know you don't like it when I go on tangents.
Ah,
No, it's all right.
But
All right,
88
guys.
right.
Can I
Okay.
say?
Live long and
All
prosper,
righty, guys. Take care.
All right.